When I was a new convert, the whole experience was a little anticlimactic. I felt like I was preparing for this huge moment in my life and spent months intellectually preparing, emotionally preparing. And then it was like once I was received into the church, I kind of just settled into like a now what? Like what is this the end? Is my life doesn't seem too drastically different. I feel like something this momentous should have a bigger impact on my life, and I just felt kind of stuck. So I'm going to talk about three things that I wish I would have realized much earlier than I did. I was decades in before I knew some of this. The first thing to realize is that you've probably spent months like going over apologetics discussions. You've probably intellectually thinking of why should I join the Catholic Church. We don't always pick up that there's a switch after you join the church. Not that the intellectual doesn't continue, but it's that theology in the Catholic Church is primarily sacramental. And it's sacramental theology that we are drawn to do after we receive the sacraments. So the intellectual tradition and the depth of the intellectual tradition is just one of the biggest draws to me of the Catholic Church. So that's really important, and obviously that's ongoing. But something to remember is that it's also sacramental, and probably primarily sacramental, in that Christ did not leave us a catechism. He did not leave us any sort of book, or even, the Bible was written after. So he left us with sacraments, and it's sacraments that we're called to contemplate. The sacraments aren't just a list of 7 random things that we do periodically. Sometimes I feel like we get it a little bit too think, and it's more like the sacraments are all signs of the presence of Christ. They're all ordered towards the heart of Christ. It's not a list. So the signs speak their own language of theology in a way that human words alone just cannot. In the early church, there was a process of initiation in which the new Catholics or the neophytes would be immersed in mystagogy, or initiation into the mysteries of our faith. So it would reflect on their own sacramental experiences, what the water felt like, just the whole process of how their experience went, and then they would pondering their meaning and their application to their own life. And the best time for mystagogy is like during the Easter season. So during the Easter season, the readings from the Mass are especially geared towards this process of initiation. So ideally, the priest is talking directly to the new converts. He's immersing them and bringing them in. But then also, hopefully, there's also a more intimate and personal connection with people in the community who work one-on-one with you, who help you break down your experiences and really just help you understand and make sense of them. This period of mystagogy is still part of our order of Christian initiation. It's supposed to be happening now, but it is often neglected, unfortunately. One reason that I think it is neglected is because people just don't know how to do it. It's not like people don't know how to do it because it's not like there's a guidebook to it, right? It's a sacramental theology. It's not just in human language. It's a whole method. It's a whole process. And we like our answers. We like our catechism. We like to say doot, 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 doot. And mystagogy is less about the answers than it is about pondering the great mysteries, than it is about asking questions and creating space. Like, it's a lot of it is making ourselves very childlike. And I will say you do kind of have to enter into a childlike state, in that you kind of feel like, I already know this, right? You think you're going to know the answers, and then you realize that you don't always know the answers, and that, or you're able to look at them in a new way, or you're able to really, really get down to, wow, Christ is really speaking to me. Because when you open the space, you're no longer positing the answer. You're like, have this mental activity that you're figuring it out, but you're actually creating space. And then it's in that space that Christ can come to us, and it creates space in our soul for him to come speak to us in a new way. And so you're actually able to receive in a way that you weren't before. And then I think another reason that people don't often have this at their parishes is that like I said, there's no strict formula. It's a very intimate and personal process. So you have to consider several different things. You have to consider, who are the people right in front of me? Who is this person being received into the church? Who is the one that's speaking with them? What is the community like? What is the culture like? What is just the general environment? All of these things come into play in mystagogy, in that these are the things that comprise that person's experience. And so you have to speak to that specific community and that specific person, and that is not something that you can just write down for somebody else to copy how you did it. So if you're a new convert, I hope that you have a parish that is helpful, that is experienced in mystagogy, that already has sort of a method in place. But if you don't, which I think most people don't, I do have a few suggestions that I hope will kind of help you. There's a book I found. It's called The Guide to the Period of Mystagogy. It's by Corinna Laughlin, Mary Wax, and Stephen Wilbricht. Could be saying that wrong, but it's a guide to the period of mystagogy. So it explains a little bit more about it. It also has really nice just ideas. So grading the environment and the overview of what you're doing, and then kind of just a format to do it with someone. And it goes through, different things to contemplate. It also has some nice sections in there for funerals and weddings. So I would definitely recommend this. Just remember, it's kind of a guide, but it's also something that you would have to contemplate and consider how you might have to adapt it to your specific circumstance. So if you're a convert, I would say maybe take this to your parish and say, I would really love if you could help me do something like this. Maybe they might be grateful for it too. Or maybe you have a convert friend and you're like, I should buy this and do this with them, or your parish community, right? So it's just kind of an idea that you have. And I would say if you don't have anybody, then just take this and go over the questions with the Holy Spirit in front of you and break it open to that ability. I'm also going to include a free download of questions that you could maybe do. If you don't want to buy the book or you don't have the finances to do that, then I would you can download just some basic questions. So I'll include a link to this and that PDF download. And then I would also recommend, if you can, I would attend a catechesis of the Good Shepherd formation for adults. So typically it's geared toward catechists who are planning to train children or lead children in mystagogy, who break open their experiences of what they probably might not even remember, but kind of called to mind the water and the different aspects for them to learn how to respond to what they've received also. So that's really what it's geared towards, but it is open to anyone that just wants to kind of learn more about this and mystagogy in general. It's where I learned about this. So a lot of what you're here is what I learned in my formation. It is kind of intensive. That's the difficult aspect, is that usually takes up a week of your time just for one part of it, and there's 6 different parts. So it's sometimes they break it down differently, but I'll link to where you could find a formation if you're interested. And if you don't want to go to a formation, maybe see if there's even just a catechist in your area, if there's an atrium in your area where the children do mystagogy. All right, so then the next thing that I would consider is commit yourself to following the precepts of the Catholic Church, the bare minimum of things the church asks us to do. Sometimes I think if you're not used to attending every Sunday, or like you're kind of used to a little bit more of a laxity, it can be kind of feel as if, like, why do I have to do this again? Why is this a mandatory discipline for me? Like, can't we kind of leave it to the person, to discern what they need? And I think what's important to remember is that this is the authority of the church that we've submitted to. They're forming a cultural identity for the Catholic Church, so that what you do is what somebody else is doing, that we all have this identity together, that a visible unity, and that all of this is established around the church year, that liturgical calendar, that life of Jesus. And it's when you do it a couple times, you start to realize that by connecting these dots, these different things, not just the precepts, but the different doctrines, you start to see something beyond just the doctrines themselves. So think of it like a connect the dot picture. So if you just have the dots on the page, you're kind of like, well, this is super random and not like, I don't get the point of this. This makes 0 sense. But then you start to see there is a shape forming. And you're like, oh, okay. And then I think as you kind of get the rhythm and you internalize the rhythm, you start to be able to draw the picture without the dots and internalize it. but you're still observant of the dots. Like you still follow the precepts, you still follow them because you are under the authority of the Catholic Church. You're thinking of the Holy Family, right? Like Jesus, he's God. He's not subject to the law. Like he is the authority. So he still followed the prescriptions of the law, even though he didn't have to. And he was obedient, to the custom of his time. And I think that's something to keep in mind. Like, yes, maybe these dots in and of themselves aren't like the particular way that you would want to do it, but you still do it that way out of respect. You are living your life as a Catholic that believes in submission to a greater authority than yourself. And so you have to kind of look at what are they pointing towards. And then I think it is really common in the beginning to just be kind of rigid because you're just learning it, right? So to have like patience with yourself and that this is what I'm comfortable with, that's totally okay. But just not to focus so much on it, to focus on, okay, what is the bigger picture though? What's going on here? And then the other reason you'd want to do that is not because you'd be too rigid, but because you'd say, well, this is dumb, so I'm not going to do it anymore. And then you kind of become disillusioned and then just don't do it anymore. So those are the two kind of risks of that. Okay, so then the third thing I would say is that remember, okay, we're called to go to Mass, right? We're called to go to Mass every week. And when you were received into the church through baptism and then strengthened and confirmed in the faith, you are also called to go out on mission. And at the end of every Mass is, go forth. The Mass is ended. If the Mass is the heartbeat of faith, what you don't want to do is like go into spiritual tachycardia where it's like beat, 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 right? And it beats so quickly, but then it doesn't have any time to go out. And so sometimes if we could draw all of our strength and all of our life from the Mass, and then we have to carry that life with us and go out to the rest of the body. You would want to definitely make sure that you're taking that life and going out. And so this could be really simple. It could be like, I'm going to help my local parish. I'm going to help them minister. They need help with different programs or different ministries, or with just help making the Mass more beautiful. But then also it should be connected to social justice. Several different popes have talked about justice as being the minimum measure of love. It's not just something extra that we do. It's actually the minimum, like the bare minimum thing we're supposed to do. And I think sometimes that gets a little backwards. So you have to look at who am I called to serve? Who am I called to go encounter? I remember I was praying once and I was like, I just don't know anybody to help. I felt like I looked, as soon as I said the words, it was like, they came right back to me like, that's kind of a you problem. Like if they had resources, they wouldn't be in trouble. So who are you called to encounter? Or the immigrant, maybe the pregnant mother, maybe it's people in hospice or end of life care, maybe it's the incarcerated, maybe it's abandoned children or children in foster care. There's so many different people that you could feel called to serve. And so who are you called to serve, and in what way? And I think if you're, maybe you feel isolated or lonely, I think it's in service that many times we find out who we are. It's like you find community in service. You understand greater that like it's not just you lonely, it's many different people. But whatever you do, I would first suggest connecting it, if possible, with your local bishop. So look for parish efforts. Maybe there's Catholic charities that is doing different things. Maybe your parish has different bereavement programs or hospitality programs or soup kitchens. I would always start as close to possible as with the unity of the church and make it very visible that your mission is connected with the mission of the church. If that's not possible, if there's nothing that's there, or maybe you feel called to do something that's not already existing, then you might have to look at secular options and secular social justice stuff, which is totally fine and good. It's just that you don't want to mentally connect that to the mission of the church, and you want to make sure those efforts are, you take that with you to Mass and offer it up. One caveat to this, though, is if you already work in a really high demand field, if you are a paramedic, if you are in the ER, if you do social services, if you work in immigration law, and you have just a really, or just anybody that has a really high demand field that requires tons of energy, maybe you're just a mom, I would definitely focus then on getting to the mass. And then you need the quicker heart rate. You need to operate quicker because you're you're going out so much every single day as part of your vocation, as your career. Then you just need more support. And I think in social justice work, you realize very, very quickly your human limits. You realize the inadequacy of your efforts, that even your very best work is not enough to meet the demands of suffering in the world. And so I think to really place that in the proper order and your efforts in the proper order, you have to go to Mass to really say, these are my efforts. They're not enough, but I commit them to you, Lord. And you offer them up with the offering at Mass. So I will include a small guide to kind of how to get started with social justice, just a list of some ideas you could do or how you could get started. Sometimes the thing that you would do is just look, well, I like to do this and I see they have a volunteer program. What does that volunteer program look like? Is that something I could commit to? And so asking these questions that are really simple, just doing the next thing and seeing what comes next, like knocking on that door and seeing how things emerge is just the way of going about that. I'll include a little excerpt from my book, Cognitive Resonance. So this is kind of just a practical guide to live your faith, and you're called to evangelize, but how do you evangelize without proselytizing? Or how do I give sacrificially while honoring my human limits, and just finding that play between. So I will include the excerpt about how to get started with social justice. So that's all I have. If this was helpful for you, I'd really love to hear from you. If you're a new convert, I would love to hear from you. If you have questions and comments, I would try my best to answer them. So far, I've been pretty good, but I know at some point it won't be sustainable to respond to every single comment. So I will do it if I can. But most importantly, welcome to the Catholic Church.